Okay, class, we're going to move on to the next lab. In this lab, we're going to assign all the IP addresses to all of our interfaces for this network. So I've signed into Ace IT Lab. I scroll down and I can see that all my labs are amber color. So that means that they're hibernated. So I'm going to turn them on one at a time. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is click on console for router A, which is essentially R1. I'm going to press, well, I don't need to, it woke up. So I'm going to click yes to relax my firewall. And then I'm going to go to local server. Then click on my NICs. I have 3 network cards. I don't know which network card attaches to subnet 1, public, or subnet 0, public, or subnet 1. So what I'm going to do is double click on a network card and click detail. Now this MAC address ends in 7.2. So I'm going to go back to lab and see that the MAC address attached to subnet 2 is subnet 0. Your MAC addresses are going to be different than mine, so you need to look. So once I know that, I'm going to go to console, close out of this, and rename this subnet 0. The order that the network cards are listed here is not necessarily going to be the order that the subnet cards are listed here. So you have to double check. So I'm going to go to the next network card. Click on detail. I'm going to look at the MAC address. This one ends in 7.5. So I'm going to go to back to lab. Back to lab. The one that ends in 7.5 is attached to subnet 1. So I'm going to go back to console. And rename this subnet 1. Then I'm just going to hit the tab key and relabel this one as public. Because if this is 0 and this is 1, this is public. Again, this order happens to match, but that's not always the case, and most of the time it's not the case. You're not just going to come in and relabel them subnet 1, subnet 0, or public. You need to look at the MAC addresses. Everyone's system is different. The way it enumerates this card has nothing to do with the order that they're added to on the virtual machine. In this case, they matched. Rarely the case. So I'm going to go back to console. So these are our range of usable IPs that we came up with subnet 1. Or subnet 0 rather. The first subnet. So I'm going to use the first usable IP on this interface. So the network card that's attached to the subnet 0 switch, I'm going to assign 172.168.0.1. Our subnet mask for our networks will be 255.255.240.0. So I'm going to go back to my routers. So for this IP, I'm going to go to Properties, 172.16.0.1. Put in our subnet mask. We're not going to worry about the gateway right now because this interface doesn't get a gateway. Because if I had a bunch of computers on this subnet, this interface would be the gateway. So if it is a gateway for another computer, it most likely doesn't get a gateway. And we're going to put in our DNS servers. These are the servers for the school. There's no way for you to figure this out on your own. You have to be told what the servers are. So in this case, the two DNS servers are 10.13.2.5 and 10.13.2.7. I'm going to pause the video for 1 minute. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. OK. Close. Now we're going to work on subnet 1, the interface attached to the subnet 1 switch. So I'm going to go to IPv4. I'm going to look at my chart. So these are the range of usable IPs for subnet 1. So on this router, I'm going to assign the first usable subnet, first usable IP in that subnet, which is 16.1, with that subnet mask. So I'm going to go back to my router, 172.16.16.1. And our two DNS servers, same DNS servers that we used before. Guys, I highly recommend that you take the PDF version of this document and print it out and write down these IP addresses right here. Then write down the subnet IDs down here. These are the subnet IDs. These are the IPs that we're going to be using. I do have that written down, but you just can't see my paper. So our next one is public. In this particular case, the school gives us an IP address that works. So we're just going to leave that alone. So this is going to be dynamically assigned, statically assigned, statically assigned. So I'm going to open up a PowerShell. I'm going to fix the font so you can see it. I'm going to run IP config /all. There's a space in there. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. There's my public interface. It gets a dynamic IP from the school. Here's my subnet 1. It's using the first usable IP in subnet 1. And here is the interface attached to subnet 0. Again, it's using the first usable IP in subnet 0. So I'm going to exit out of that. The next thing I want to do is open up the firewall to allow us to ping other machines and to allow this machine to receive a ping. So I'm going to go down to Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. I'm going to go to Inbound Rules and scroll down until I find File and Print Sharing Echo Requests. There's two of them. So I'm holding down Shift to select them. I'm going to enable the rule. Then I'm going to go to Outbound Rules. I'm going to highlight the first two, File and Print Sharing Echo Request, enable the rule. So I did that for inbound and outbound. I'm going to close this down. So the last thing we need to do is rename this computer. I'm going to click change. I'm just going to call this R1, lowercase. Click OK. Close and restart. Now, when we do this lab in class, it takes a lot longer because I'm helping the students out when they do typos and things like that. So just keep in mind that when I record a lab, it's going to be a lot shorter than when we're doing it live. So the speed in which I'm doing this lab is probably going to be a lot quicker than what you're doing the lab. So when you're going through the lab, you're going to be pausing the videos, setting it up, unpausing, things like that. That's normal. I'm going to press Control-Delete to sign in. Using our standard password. So now I'm going to configure router B. So I'm going to go to my diagram. Router B, or R2, has two subnets it's attached to. I have two network cards. The first one is attached to subnet 1, and the second one is attached to subnet 2. I don't know which one is which. So I'm going to sign in. I'm going to press pause for a minute. Okay, the machine is fully logged in now, so I'm going to go to local server, then click on my NIC cards. So I don't know which one is subnet 1 or which one is subnet 2. On virtual machines, you can always look at the virtual machines and figure out the MAC addresses. If this was a real machine, I would just go and unplug one of the network cards, and when I unplug a network card, it will get a red X, so I'll know which one is which. But right now I'm just looking at the MAC addresses. So I'm going to go back to lab. The network card that ends in E3 is attached to subnet 1. So I'm going to go to the console. This one ends in E3. So I'm going to rename that subnet 1. Hit the tab key. This one must be subnet 2 then. I only have two network cards. One attached to subnet 1, one attached to subnet 2. So now I'm going to configure the IP address for the network card attached to subnet 1. So I use 172.16.16.1 on R1. So that's the first usable IP address for that subnet. I look at my diagram. I'm using that here. So I could use any IP that I wanted for the second subnet. So what I'm going to do is just use the last IP. So the last usable IP in that network is 172.16.31.254. But I could have used 16.2 if I wanted. I'm just going to use the last one. .172.16 10.31.254. Put in our subnet mask that we designed, and the same DNS servers. 10.13.2.5. 10.13.2.7. I had a typo. 255. 255.255.240.0. Now I'm going to do the same for subnet 2. So I'm going to look on my chart. The first usable IP in subnet 2 is 172.16.32.1. I'm going to go back to my diagram. So I'm going to use 172.16.32.1 right here. That's part of subnet 2. All the IPs in this network are part of subnet 2. I might have some PCs here, but for this lab I don't have any actual IP address. I don't have any PCs in the subnet other than the 2 routers, but I could. .172.16. I'm going to pause the video for 1 second. So I'm putting in 172.16.32.1 with our subnet mask that we designed, and the same DNS servers. I'm going to click OK. 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 Close this. So for the interface attached to subnet 1, I used the last usable IP. For the interface attached to subnet 2, I used the first usable IP. So in our network diagram, this is 172.16.31.254, and this is 172.16. I'm sorry. This is 172.16.0.1. This is 172.16.31.254. This is 172.16. I gotta look at the map. I was wrong. This is 172.16.16.1. This is 172.16.31.254. And this is 172.16.32.1. 0.1, 16.1, 31.254, and 32.1. So the next thing I'm going to do on the second router is open up my firewall. So I'm going to scroll down to File and Print Sharing, Echo Request, and enable that. I'm going to do the same thing for outbound. In real life, once I get everything configured, I'd probably disable these again, especially if that router touches the internet. I might not even enable them if I know what I'm doing. But you're just starting out and you want to test it with ping, you need to enable these rules. That's allowing ping traffic to be received and sent. So the next thing I'm going to do is rename the computer. All lowercase. It's going to be R2. Click OK. OK. Close, then restart. I'm going to sign back in. And move on to the third router. I'm going to sign in. While signing in, I'm going to pause the video to keep it short. Okay, my machine is logged in now, so I'm going to go to local server, choose my network cards. I have two network cards. I don't know which one is attached to which switch, so I'm going to go back to lab. So now I'm on, it's R3 or router C, the third router. I have two network cards. The one that ends in EE is attached to subnet 2. Again, you're going to have different MAC addresses, so you need to look. So I'm going to go back to that machine, look at the MAC addresses, detail. This one is EE, so this is attached to subnet 2. Hit the tab key. This one must be attached to subnet 3. If you wanted to, you can look at the MAC addresses here as well. I'm going to type ipconfig /all. I'm going to scroll up. This one is 8.3 attached to subnet 3 now. Excuse me, 8.3, it's attached to subnet 3. See where it says physical address? Now I'm going to go up to the other NIC. This one ends in EE, it's attached to subnet 2 now. This name changed because I changed it on that graphic interface. So we're going to look at our chart. So I have two network cards on R3. One is attached to the subnet 2 switch. One is attached to the subnet 3 switch. So I need to find an IP address in subnet 2 that I can use. I need to find an IP address in subnet 3 that I can use. So I'm going to look at our chart. For subnet 2, I've used this one already. On R2. So for R3, I'm going to use the last IP in that subnet. 47.254. (172.16.47.254). And we're going to use our subnet mask that we designed. 240.0. And the DNS servers, again, are the school's DNS servers. 10.13.2.5 and 10.13.2.7. I'm going to click OK. OK. Close. Now I'm going to do the same for subnet 3. So I'm going to go to my chart. So the first available IP for subnet 3 is 172.16.48.1. (172.16.48.1) 255.255.240.0 and the same DNS servers. I don't know what that was. It just popped up. Computer was doing some maintenance task in the background. Okay, so just to reiterate, for this interface, I used the first IP in the subnet. For this interface, I used the first IP in the subnet. For this interface, I used the last IP in the subnet. These are all in the same subnet. For this interface right here, I used the first IP in subnet 2. For this one, I used the last IP in subnet 2. And for subnet 3, this interface, I used the first IP in subnet 3. I'm going to say that one more time. For this interface, I used the first IP in subnet 0. For this interface, I used the first IP in subnet 1. For this one, I used the last IP in subnet 1. For this one, first IP in subnet 2. For this one, I used the last IP in subnet 2. This one, first IP. So the first IP in that subnet, first IP in this subnet, last IP in this subnet. First IP in this subnet, last IP in this subnet. First IP in this subnet, there is no last. There's no other routers out here. Guys, if this doesn't show up right away, just click refresh. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is open up my firewall. So what we've done for every machine so far is configure the IPs, fix the firewall, rename the computer. We're using these Microsoft boxes as routers. But if you're using Cisco, the process to do what we just did is different, but you're still going to do the same things. You're going to assign the IPs, fix the firewall, rename the router. So I'm going to open up the firewall, file and print sharing echo requests, both inbound and outbound. Close it. Now I'm going to rename it. This is going to be R3 based on the network diagram. Click OK. Okay, then close and restart. Now this machine is done. So I'm going to go back to lab. So guys, you might want to do this 2 or 3 times until you feel comfortable assigning all the IP addresses. It's a very important process. It's really important that you don't assign the IP for subnet 1 to the subnet 0 interface. So you need to make sure that you match those MAC addresses. If you want to do this 2 or 3 times, all you need to do is deactivate, reactivate. You'll be back to a clean lab so you can try it some more. I'm going to go back to router 3, sign in. So guys, again, do this 2 or 3 times, practice it. I want to deactivate, reactivate to get to a clean slate. You need to keep up with these labs because this is what I'm going to grade as your final skills exam. So you need to be very good with these, with your time management. Don't wait to the very end to set everything up. If you get in a jam, you'll text me and I'll help you out. If I see that we're in the last week of class and you're asking me how to configure IP addresses, I'll know that you're not keeping up with the labs. So don't wait till the end. Okay guys, this is it for this lab. The next lab we're going to do is configure R1 to be a NAT router. I'm going to post a video from LinkedIn Learning so you can listen and learn about NAT routers, and then I'll show you in a video that I create how to set it up. Thank you.